Chapter 23. The second-ranked steward led them to the Phoenix Wright's pavilion and walked along the lakeside path. As a result, the third-ranked steward saw someone he definitely did not want to see. That person slowly walked over. He was wearing a fox fur coat and looked extremely wealthy. However, he wore a willow headband and was playing with a simple dagger. To be able to stroll around in the strict hierarchy of Baelyong Palace, it was His Royal Highness, who spent all his time reading forbidden books. When Su Fengnian saw Lin Tanhua, who had been thrown into the cesspool, he gave the steward a look to keep quiet. He quickened his pace and said with a smile, "Third ranker, have you come to eat rouge? Did you not eat enough during the Lantern Festival?" Lin Tanhua, who did not know Su Fengnian's background, asked timidly, "You are?" Su Fengnian deliberately put on an arrogant and disgusting look and said with a pretentious face, "I am His Royal Highness's study partner." Lin Tanhua, who originally thought that he had met a local tyrant of an aristocratic family during the Lantern Festival, was relieved. His expression was awkward. Although the bastard in front of him was not a descendant of a rich family, he was close to His Highness. Even if Lin Tanhua did not know much about worldly affairs, he still knew the pros and cons. Before he could react, the study partner, who was using his connections to bully others, had already taken a few steps forward and looked straight at Fan Mimi. He completely ignored Lin Tanhua and said softly, "Mimi Fan, it's fate. Let me take you on a tour of the prince's mansion." At the Tide Listening Pavilion, you can see tens of thousands of koi fish jumping over the Dragon's Gate. After saying these polite words, Su Fengnian reached out to hold Fan Mimi's small hand. Lin Tanhua, who was full of heroism, quickly stood between the two and glared at them. Su Fengnian smiled and threatened her softly, "You who eats rouge, don't fail to appreciate my kindness. Since I'm His Royal Highness's study partner, it wouldn't be difficult for me to feed you 6 or 7 boxes of rouge. Or, if I put in a little more effort, it's possible that you'll be rejected. Think about it." The man who came in third was pale. It was rare for him to act like a man. He refused to move, which made Su Fengnian have a whole new level of respect for him. The elegant Miss Fan sighed softly. She squeezed out a smile and comforted, "Brother Lin, it's fine. I've long wanted to see the scenery of the Tide Listening Pavilion." Su Fengnian walked forward with the beauty in tow. He quietly hooked his finger and called the second-class steward to his side, instructing, "Tell Su Xiao not to show himself. Let's wait for 3 or 4 days." The steward, whose back was facing the young master and young mistress, said flatteringly in a low voice, I know. It definitely won't affect His Royal Highness's important matters." Su Fengnian said softly, "I'll reward you later." The steward smiled like a flower. "Thank you for your reward, Your Highness." Su Fengnian patted him on the shoulder and led Fan Mimi, who was like a lamb in a tiger's den, to the embankment across the lake. He even took the initiative to put the willow ring on her head and threw a look of protest at the grief-stricken Lin Tanhua. On the embankment, which was named Colorful Z, there were many orioles and swallows brushing past Su Fengnian. They were just as quick-witted as the steward. With just one look from Su Fengnian, they knew that His Royal Highness was starting to tease the freshly minted girls again. Baelyong Palace not only had many servants, but there were also quite a number of officials who had received favors from the Great Pillar State. Each of them worked like an ox or a horse for the king of Baelyong's residence in Wutongan. Where Su Fengnian lived, the female servants were divided into 4 classes. There were 2 first-class maidservants. One of them was naturally fragrant and specialized in warming His Royal Highness's bed. The other was in charge of raising snow-white spear falcons for Su Fengnian. There were 4 second-class maidservants. One of them was skilled in poetry, calligraphy, and was especially good at writing beautiful characters. She was in charge of adding incense to His Royal Highness's bed. The other 3 had also been strictly influenced by music and singing since they were young. The third-class maidservants were in charge of simple chores such as watering the flowers and setting up the tea stove. The fourth-class maidservants were in charge of menial chores such as cleaning the courtyard. Of these women, other than the first-class maidservants who were in charge of warming His Royal Highness's bed, the rest of them were all around 71 in beauty. If Su Fengnian wanted to eat rouge, he could eat until he was full at any time. As if feeling depressed, Fan Mimi softly asked, "Does young master use the blade?" Su Fengnian shamelessly said, "I have diligently practiced the blade for 10 years. My blade skills are only at a small level." In order to prove that he had practiced the blade for many years, Su Fengnian performed a mighty sweeping move. In the end, he accidentally threw the spring thunder, which almost fell into the lake. Fan Mimi smiled and considerately tilted her head to look into the distance. Su Fengnian picked up the sacred weapon of the blade that had met with an unworthy owner. He didn't feel embarrassed at all and explained that it was an accident. When they arrived at the base of the Tide Listening Pavilion, Fan Mimi looked at the 3 plaques under the eaves. One was the 9-dragon plaque inscribed by the late emperor, the other was the plaque Grand and Magnificent, written by great masters, and the other plaques with a phoenix coming and fighting bull. On the contrary, she wasn't particularly moved by the beautiful sight of koi fish tossing bait. It was quite different from the young ladies and daughters who had been abducted by Su Fengnian in the past. Su Fengnian thought that it would be better if it was different. Always eating shark's fin and bird's nest would spoil his appetite. Occasionally eating autumn base and winter bamboo shoots would whet his appetite. Just as Su Fengnian was enjoying the beautiful appearance of the girl beside him, a strange phenomenon occurred. The lake water began to boil and undulate, exactly the same as that snowy day. Su Fengnian was pleasantly surprised. He waved his hand and had a servant lead the shocked Fan Mimi to the Phoenix Rites Pavilion. He also ordered everyone at the lakeside to leave. After doing all this, Su Fengnian hurriedly ran to the small ferry where the black awning boat was parked. Carrying the spring thunder saber that could cut iron like mud, he jumped onto the boat. Just as he was about to row the boat, he saw old Huang swaying his old body as thin as a bamboo pole and rushing over. He was even carrying the long cloth pouch that had once caused Su Fengnian so much suffering. Inside it was a rosewood box that was nearly 4 feet long. Su Fengnian rolled his eyes. What was this old Huang doing? What if the old man at the bottom of the lake turned hostile and refused to recognize him? Would the master and servant compete to see who could escape faster? After old Huang boarded the small boat, Su Fengnian rowed to the center of the lake. His palms were sweaty. His Royal Highness had always been a good gambler. This time he was going to bet big.